take a shot every time I say excited. You're gonna be so drunk. Only 18 and I have like my entire life to read. Hello. I am Shirin and I bought a bunch of books in the past month and I wanted to share them with you. I have some great classic literature recommendations, some Indian literature, translated fiction, and yeah, so we're gonna have a lot of fun while I discuss about some books. So let's get started. The first book is The Awakening by Kate Chopin. I first got introduced to Chopin in my school. It was her story. The Story of an Hour was part of my ISS syllabus. I absolutely loved it. It was a feministic story. It basically spoke about marriage from the point of view of a woman. It was a very short story and it was very impactful. So I decided to research a little bit about her and I got to know about her most controversial and most popular book, The Awakening. This collection also consists of some other short stories that she has written. The Awakening, if you don't know, is about an extramarital affair of a woman. This was published in 1899 and was actually banned because of how controversial this was. So I'm excited to see what this book was and why was it so controversial that people felt the need to ban it. The next book that I have is called Poonachi, the story of a black goat by Perumal Murugan. This is a book which was written in Tamil and it has been translated by N. Kalyan Raman. Perumal Murugan is one of the most celebrated Tamil novelists and a lot of his books are very popular. He writes basically in more rural settings. So yeah, I don't know much about it. Let's just read the blurb. An old man is watching the sun set over his village one quiet evening when a mysterious stranger turns up with a gift of a day-old goat kid. So thus begins the story of Poonachi, the little black goat whose fragility and fecundity becomes cause for wonderment to all those around her. So yeah, I am excited and this is going to be my first Perumal. So I love this. I'm going to read his other works like One Part Woman, I think is one of his other books, and I don't know, some other books of his. And the next book that I have is called Ghachar Kochar. This is again another translated Indian literature. This one has been translated from Kannada by Srinath Perur and this has been written by Vivek Shanbag. I'm really sorry for butchering the name of the author's name. From what I have heard, this is basically about a family who go from being like a middle class family to becoming super wealthy. Next book that I have is Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. I cannot believe I've not read any Virginia Woolf yet. I definitely want to read To the Lighthouse and A Room of One's Own as well. But this is going to be my first Virginia Woolf. Sometimes I just think about like how do I not read, how have I not read like so many of these really popular authors. Then I remind myself that I'm only 18 and I have like my entire life to read. So yeah, this is about after the First World War and it follows a day, so very excited to read this as well. The next book is actually a book that I've actually read already and I just finished this yesterday. I remember I was just reading this like till 1 o'clock at night. If you guys don't know, Sylvia Plath actually committed suicide just 2 months after this book got published, and this book deals with a lot of that as well. And it has been said that she had reportedly tried to harm herself multiple times while writing this book. So she was going through a very tumultuous time personally and emotionally while she was writing this book, and it is definitely reflected in the character called Esther, who also follows a very similar path to hers. And a lot of people think this is semi-autobiographical, that a lot of the things that Sylvia Plath writes has happened to her in her own life. I read this book, I absolutely loved it. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. It was definitely very emotional. I would say definitely if you have some triggers, don't read this book. But yeah, if you want to read a classic that will make you understand, okay, this is why these books are called classics, you will get it. This is just so great. And her observations are delightful in this book. Like whether that's like being, like she basically says like, you know, being a third wheel in any place is basically like, you know, seeing the city of Paris while you're moving away from it in a vessel. Just like very small, such delightful observations about the world and how men and women interact. It's just amazing. It's really amazing, very intelligent. It's just so sad that a woman of such intelligence, such brightness decided to take her own life. So definitely highly recommend The Belja by Sylvia Plath. The next book that I have is another book that I already finished also, The Stationery Shop of Tehran by Marjan Kamali. This book follows 1953 Iran and a love story that was blooming while the country was sort of just descending into a civil war. And in fact, I think that is what it is written, right? Like 1953 Tehran, in a small shop in a country on the brink of unrest, two people meet for the very first time. And this is about a love story, obviously, as I said, and it is a very fascinating look into that time, because a lot of us talk a lot about the Islamic Revolution that happened in Iran, but we'd forget the 1953 civil war that led to the overthrowing of the prime minister. And this is very accessible. You don't need to know a lot of Iran's history. Yeah, definitely love it. Love the writing. Again, a 5-star read. So yeah, I am hoping all of these books are going to be 5-star reads for me. So let's see. Next book is Norwegian Wood by Murakami. Now, this is another author that I feel like, how have I not read him yet? But yeah, I have not read him. And I don't know much about Norwegian Wood at all. So let me read the blurb. This is the first time I'm reading it. When he hears her favorite Beatles song, Toru Watanabe recalls his first love, Naoko, the girlfriend of his best friend Kizuiki. Immediately, he's transported back almost 20 years to his student days in Tokyo, adrift in a world of uneasy friendship, casual passion, loss, and desire, to a time when an impetuous young woman called Midori marched into his life and he had to choose between the future and the past. Very interesting. A lot of people do criticize how Murakami writes women, so I want to see what those criticisms are about, but it's definitely very interesting blurb. Very, very excited to read this as well. Next book is another book that I am excited to read everything. I'm really sorry, okay, if I continuously keep saying I'm very excited, because I am. It's Hamlet by Maggie O'Farrell. This book is about Shakespeare's wife. I think her name was Agnes, and the loss of their children. Hamlet. No, not children. I mean this child called Hamlet. I don't think Shakespeare is mentioned here directly. This is what has been said. I have heard that Shakespeare is never really mentioned like by his name, but he's just referred to as, you know, the playwright. So yeah, this is basically a way of trying to take away from the spotlight of Shakespeare and basically giving it to his wife and his family. And I've heard her writing is very good, so I'm very, very excited to read this as well. This was the winner for Women's Prize for Fiction 2020, so that got to mean something. Next book is The Pearl That Broke Its Shell by Nadia Hassin. I actually was trying to find books that were similar to The Kite Runner and A Thousand Splendid Suns, which are some of my favorite books of all times, and this book kept popping up in almost every recommendation. And in fact, Khaled Hosseini has actually written, Nadia Hashmi has written a tender and beautiful family story. Her always engaging multi-generational tale is a portrait of Afghanistan in all of its perplexing, enigmatic glory. See, this book I think follows two women who are like very decades apart, so it's sort of like, you know, a multi-generational saga. And this book basically highlights this very common practice apparently in Afghanistan, I've heard, called bacha post, in which like small girls dress as boys so that they get to have the same sort of freedom and education that boys will get. So it is quite fascinating. There's also another non-fiction book called The Underground Girls of Kabul, which talks about this practice. So if I like this book and I am intrigued about the practice, I will definitely read that. Next book is The 7 Moons of Mali Almeida by Shehnan Karuna Tilaka. I'm very sorry for butchering all the names, like extremely sorry to everyone here. This won the Booker Prize in 2022. She's a Sri Lankan author, and this book talks about the crisis that happened in Sri Lanka. And it is a searing satire set amid the murderous mayhem of Sri Lanka beset by civil war. I think that's all we need to know. Let's see how this book is, and yeah, definitely very excited as well. Just take a shot every time I say excited. You're gonna be so drunk by the end of it. Amitav Ghosh. She's The Hungry Tide. It's my next book. This book actually follows Sundarban, which is in my state. And I don't know too much about it, except that this book just follows the nature of Sundarbans and how the nature is just very powerful and can create havoc. Let's read the blurb. In between this seas and the plains of Bengal, on the easternmost coast of India, lies an immersive archipelago of islands. Some of them are vast and some no larger than sandbars. Some have lasted through recorded history while others have just washed into being. These are the Sundarbans. The settlers of the Sundarban believe that anyone without a pure heart who ventures into the watery labyrinth will never return. It is the arrival of Piali Roy of Indian parentage with stubbornly American and Kanai Datta, a sophisticated Delhi businessman, that disturbs the delicate balance of settlement life. Kanai has returned to the islands on the request of his aunt for the first time since the death of his uncle, a political radical who died mysteriously. When Piali, who is on the track of the rare river dolphin, hires an illiterate but proud local man called Fokir as her guide, Kanai becomes her translator. From this moment, the tide begins to turn. Very, very interesting blurb. Very, very excited to read this. I think this is going to be the next book I pick up. I just got very moved by that blurb. And last but not the least, I have a book which is a mammoth. It is The Tomb of Science by Gitanjali Shri. It has been translated by Daisy Rockwell and is the winner of the International Booker Prize 2022. I don't know when I will ever get to this. Okay, I would love to get to this, but this is just so huge. But yeah, I will read this. I will definitely read this. In northern, let's just read the blurb. In northern India, an 80-year-old woman slips into a deep depression after the death of her husband and then resurfaces to gain a new lease on life. Her determination to fly in the face of convention, including striking up a friendship with a transgender person, confuses her bohemian daughter, who used to think of herself as the more modern of the two. To her family's consternation, Ma insists on traveling to Pakistan, simultaneously confronting the unresolved trauma of her teenage experience in partition and re-evaluating what it means to be a mother, a daughter, a woman, and a feminist. Rather than respond to tragedy with seriousness, Gitanjali Shri's playful tone and exuberant words will do that. So yeah, that's the book. So thank you so much for watching this video, and if you like this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment down below, as well as you can follow my other channel, which is my main channel. It's called Shirin and Welcome. I will leave it somewhere, and yeah, so thank you so much, and let me know if you have any book requests, any videos that you want to see.